Hello. So, today we are going to talk about the difference between the Buffer Pro, the original Face 1, and the Face 1 with the star on it. Because I have been wondering for a very long time what the differences are between these brushes. I've read and watched a lot of reviews, or not a lot. There's only a few out there for the differences between these brushes. Um, and I had always kind of come away from those reviews as they have a slightly different shape to them, but they're basically the same brush. And my experience has been very different. So I wanted to come on here and talk about it and share my thoughts because that's what I do here. So let me put these down on a soft surface and then we can start the video. All right. So I have them here in chronological order of when they were released, but also in the order that I bought them in. Um, I came very late to the Fude game, but I was actually able to pick up the original Face 1 secondhand. Same thing with the Face 1 with a star afterwards. And really the only one that I bought new was the Buffer Pro. And I don't think I realized at the time when I picked up the original Face 1 just how lucky I was to be able to find it. Because let me tell you, since then, I haven't really seen another one of these come up secondhand. Maybe there's been like one, but it got scooped up very quickly. But I have been very curious since I got this one what the other two were like because everyone always, says the original Face 1 is the best. But it was always really hard for me to understand why. Because people will say that the Face 1 is the best and they don't like the other two, but then the reasons don't really line up with my reality. For example, when I only had the original Face 1, people would call this brush very airy and great to use for finishing powder because of that. I have never considered this brush airy. It's just not the texture that I would consider it. To me, it's very dense while being incredibly soft and smooth. But and maybe a better way of putting it is it's a stiff brush. Like this part of it is somehow stiff while maintaining movement in the very end of the brush, which makes it feel so incredibly soft. And of course, the quality of the materials are so high that even though the brush is rather stiff, it feels very soft on the skin. I think one review that I watched or read a long time ago described this as feeling like you were almost like you had carpet attached to the end of the brush instead of like a bristle. Like it kind of felt like you were rubbing your face with carpet. And I think the idea was carpet is stiff, but the ends of it would feel very, very soft. And that's been the best description that I've seen so far for this brush, but I don't consider this airy in any way. And I want to make that distinction because I actually consider both of these to be rather airy brushes in comparison to this one. And I don't like that about them actually. But this one has been fantastic for me for applying my Bare Minerals foundation. That is what I use this for 100% of the time. I know some people enjoy using this brush or other buffing brushes for finishing powder. I don't use this or either one of these for finishing powder. I do now use the Niji Pro for buffing out finishing powder if I want to do that, but I don't do that for with this brush. So this review is going to come from the point of view that I'm using this for a loose mineral foundation, and that's really all I use it for. I don't use it for anything else. So I like how stiff this is. I like how soft it is. I find this irreplaceable for how evenly this applies my foundation and how evenly and well it buffs things out. I think that's what sets this apart from um, these three, but also any other buffing brush I've ever had. And that includes other natural hair brushes like the original Bare Minerals buffing brushes, this Say brush that my mom gave me, which is a very dense but synthetic brush. This has a combination of traits that I just have not seen or heard of in another brush. I've never heard of another brush that is this dense and stiff and able to pick up and apply things evenly while being incredibly soft. Actually, the only other brush that would be close to that would be the Niji Pro. And honestly, for some reason, I lost this brush, the original Face 1, and wasn't able to replace it. I would actually probably replace it, or I'd try to replace it with the Niji Pro, because it's a very different shape, and I don't know if I would love using it for foundation, but it is able to pick things up and apply them very evenly and buff them out very, very gently and evenly. I would very much prefer to keep my Face 1 though, so hopefully that doesn't happen. But to compare it to these two, and maybe starting with the Face 1 Remake. So this is the one that has the star. I can't remember exactly the story behind this one. I think that Sonia G was trying to bring back the Face 1, so this brush, but the manufacturer that made the original brush couldn't make it anymore. And so she went to a different manufacturer who I believe may have been outside Kumano. I can't remember. But it was a different manufacturer, which is why it has the little star here to differentiate it. So this was a different manufacturer, different materials, but it was her way of trying to bring back the Face 1. And I have to say, I mean, just looking at these, they do look very similar. Like there isn't a lot visually different about them. In a lot of reviews, there was something about like the Face 1 with the star being more domed than the original Face 1. And like if I look really, really hard, like if I compare them, like yes, there is a very slight doming on the Face 1 with the star, and the original Face 1 is basically just straight across the entire way. There is zero dome. But I'm going to tell you, like in person visually, it's really hard to tell. Like it's not a very obvious feature if you're like holding them in your hands the way that I am right now. Like if you held these at a distance from me and like, you know, mixed them up and was like, okay, can you tell the difference? I wouldn't be able to. The doming of this one is not enough to tell the difference between them visually. However, I'll tell you what the doming is an effect of, which makes it very different from this one. Because if you taped up these handles and let me use them, I'd be able to tell you in about 2 seconds which one's which. One, first and foremost, the Face 1 with a star, I think, so this is just my opinion, okay? I think it is made with lower quality materials, specifically the bristles. Again, this is my opinion. I'm not an expert or anything, and I only have one of each of these brushes. But the material in this bristle is less soft, not just than the Face 1, but also Sonia G's other tea-dyed goat hair brushes. I have a number of these. I quite like them. I really like the tea-dyed goat hair from Sonia G. It's just very nice and soft and luxurious. And this one just feels a little bit coarse by comparison with all the others that I have. So not just comparing with this specific tea-dyed brush, but also other tea-dyed brushes from Sonia G. This one feels a little bit more coarse, a little bit, I want to say like a little bit drier, and I'm trying to think of a way to say that in a different way, because I don't think that's the right word to use. But it just feels like it's as if the individual bristles, so not the whole head taken as a whole, but the individual bristles feel stiffer. They don't like to flow with each other quite as well, but the overall brush head seems less dense. So the overall brush head seems softer. So I hope that makes sense. The original Face 1, you don't feel the individual bristles at all. Like going back to the carpet analogy, like you don't feel the individual things in here at all. It's like this is just a flat surface that you're putting on your face. You're not feeling individual bristles. This one you can feel the individual bristles. You can, and especially at the edges of the brush. So towards the center, it's more, even then it's not quite as much of a flat surface as the original. But it's dense. There's a density there, and it kind of keeps things together. But you can feel the individual bristles of this. And I suspect that if these were bundled the same way, this would feel less soft, because I think the individual bristles of this one are less soft. Now, here's a caveat. These two brushes I got secondhand. I don't know how the original owners treated these brushes. It could be what I'm feeling here is someone who really stripped their brush with cleaning. That's entirely possible. This could just be the specific brush that I have. But I based on what I have here, I do think that this bristle is lower quality. I don't think it's as nice. But so going forward to the bundling aspect of it and going back to the dome shape, I think what makes this not as good of a brush for applying mineral foundation for me is because the only part of the brush that is like the original is the very middle. This middle part is much denser than the outer part of the brush. This brush as a whole doesn't have the same integrity as this brush. This brush, you put this brush on your skin, it is one flat thing on your skin. This all like stays together. This one, on the other hand, when you buff this out, and you can even see the way that this moves on my skin, I think, is it doesn't move as a whole. The middle moves together, and then the outer portion kind of, it doesn't move with the middle part. It's almost like the brush ballooned away from itself. And so you just have like this middle part that's the actual buffing brush, and then you have this like giant part of the brush that's just fringe. And so that doesn't help me, because I find that this does not apply my mineral foundation in an even way. This can apply things in a little bit more of a patchy way. And I also find that this doesn't buff evenly as well. And that is because this part is much more dense. The outer part is less dense. And the way that this brush is, how it's shaped, is you have the dense part of the brush kind of sticking up in the middle, and then the less dense fringe, which is more than half of the brush, frankly, just kind of like leans out. And then all of the stuff that's leaning out isn't as dense, isn't helping me buff out my foundation as much, and it also creates this uneven surface. That's what's creating the dome. So it's not the dome itself that is the issue. The dome is kind of just the visualization of what's going on in this brush. Now, I've used slightly domed buffing brushes before. I'm pretty sure my Bare Minerals brush had a bit of a dome to it, but it was just a very different brush. It was a very different level of quality. But I think that if this was just shaped this way, but it was dense all throughout, the way that this one was, I don't think the dome would be the issue. I think the issue is the difference in density in different parts of this brush that make it very difficult for me to apply and buff in an even fashion. So I find myself not using this brush at all. And when I do use it, the effect is my mineral foundation looks powdery. Now I will say, in this brush's defense, it still is a Sonia G brush. It is still a very high quality brush. This still does apply my mineral foundation better than any non-Sonia G brush. I do want to say that. But I will say that for Sonia G brush. This is a cut below. It's not quite. I wouldn't recommend this brush. Let me say that. If you have been curious about this brush and how it stacks up to the original Face 1, I don't recommend you buy this. If you see this secondhand and it's a good price and you're curious about it, I don't recommend you buy this. And I say that because the Buffer Pro, in my opinion, in my experience, is not a remake of the original Face 1. It is a remake in better quality materials of the remake of the Face 1. These two brushes perform almost identically for me, which makes me really sad because I don't like this brush. I don't like the Face 1 with the star on it. And in the same way, I don't like the Buffer Pro. Now, the reason I would recommend you buy the Buffer Pro over the Face 1 with the star is, one, I'm going to recommend across the board that you buy your brushes new, not secondhand. Someday I will make a video about why I recommend that. But I recommend you get a new brush when you can, but also because as much as I don't like how these two function, the Buffer Pro is made of better materials. This is the nice, soft, beautiful, high quality bristle that I expect from Sonia G. I have no problem with any of the materials used in this brush, the way that I kind of have some issue with the bristle in the Face 1 with the star. This is a really lovely feeling brush. It feels really nice on the skin, but it does this, the brush head does the same thing as the Face 1 with the star. It has a much more dense core than what's happening on the fringe of the brush. You don't get a lot of buffing space with this brush, which is funny because when it blooms out, you actually have a larger brush. Like, here, let me make sure that these are buffed out a little bit. They get a little weird when I have them laying down on a flat surface like this. But you see how the Buffer Pro has a little bit more, it just blooms out to be a larger brush. Like it'll cover more face space. So it feels like a larger brush on the face, but it gives you a lot less precision. It gives you a lot less control over how even things are applied. And it doesn't have the buffing power that the original Face 1 does. The original Face 1 is just, it just buffs. It's so good. It all moves together. It can buff out anything. I've made a lot of mistakes and this has helped me buff them out. This one, on the other hand, is, it just doesn't do that. You only really have a small space in here that has the kind of buffing capacity that the original Face 1 does, and then you have all this fringe space that doesn't really do very much. So what ends up happening with this brush is when I am applying my mineral foundation, I go to apply it, it applies unevenly, and then I have to buff around a lot more, and I have to buff with the center of the brush. I can't buff with the whole thing. The bristles on the outside don't do very much, so I have to go and buff with this middle part. So even though it's a larger brush and it takes up more face or space on my face, the actual part of the brush that I use that is useful to me is smaller than the Face 1. And so this all boils down to these two brushes are kind of finicky for me to use. And Bare Minerals foundation, I love it, but it's a finicky product. So I don't want to use a finicky brush with a finicky product. I need something to be solid. And I wish that Bare Minerals wasn't as finicky as it is. I wish I had a better foundation, but it is the best that I found so far. And the Sonia G Face 1 is just the best. It is just the best. And these two just don't compare. They don't compare. So I wanted to do this comparison because I really had come away from reading all of the other comparisons as really the only difference between these was this is a flat top brush and these two have a little bit of a dome to them. And that is true. That is true, but that's not the part of the story that matters. What matters to me, in my experience, using this for a loose mineral foundation that is a very finicky product, is the original Face 1 applies my foundation in a very even manner and it buffs it out like a dream. I don't have issues with my foundation getting cakey on me. I don't have issues with it getting weird or patchy or uneven. Whereas these two, they apply the foundation in an uneven manner, and then the part of the brush that I can use to buff out the foundation is much smaller, and then the fringe part of the brush on the outside that isn't very dense just either does nothing or it contributes to the foundation looking powdery or patchy or uneven. And all that to say is I don't like either one of these brushes. And at some point, I probably will declutter and just keep brushes that I love, and I'll probably only keep this one. And what I'd really like to do is find another Face 1, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull that off, so we shall see. But I don't like either one of these. I've used these in a lot of different ways. I've used these with different primers, with my foundation. I've tried different techniques. At the end of the day, these are very fundamentally different brushes than the Face 1, in my opinion. I don't know what exactly about these is different from someone who is not a brush expert. I would suspect that the actual bundling of the bristles is very different in these two in comparison to the original. I don't know what that would mean. I don't know if that means that there's more bristle in the original one. I just don't know. What I can tell you is that these are not the same brush. And I think it's a little bit strange that Sonia G has released these two, and I mean specifically this one. This is supposed to be the, the going forward, the replacement for the Face 1. But it's a very different brush than the Face 1. I don't think that it replaces the Face 1. And frankly, I really, really, really wish that Sonia G would come back out with the original Face 1. I don't know what manufacturing challenges there would be to do so, but this is a far superior buffing brush to either one of these. Basically, I want another one of the Face 1s. So I think that's everything that I had. If you have any questions or if I missed anything between these three, or if you have had a different experience, please let me know. I would love to know if you have different thoughts and feelings towards these three brushes. It's always interesting to hear what other people think because my experience is not universal necessarily. But anyway, I think that's my rambling is over. If you stuck around to the end of this video, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. And I hope that this was fun and interesting for you. And I hope to see you in the next video. So, bye for now.